I've seen people lose everything and still remain standing, and I've seen others crumble from a single word against them. I've asked myself many times, what makes some different from others? Why do some fade at the first storm while others, in the midst of the same hurricane, become light for those around them? With time, I discovered a simple but powerful truth. The soul also has architecture, and like any building, it stands or falls according to the pillars it has. No matter how much the facade shines, if there are no strong columns inside, any wind will bring it down. That led me on a journey in search of those invisible columns that sustain a human being even in their darkest nights. And what I found was that there are nine pillars that, when you build them, turn your life into something indestructible. In this audiobook, you're not going to hear empty theories. You're going to walk with me through stories, trials, and living examples. People I met, battles I faced, lessons that left marks. Each chapter is an invitation to raise within yourself an eternal pillar. Patience, vision, discipline, faith, courage, silence, word, action, legacy. 9 pillars, 9 keys, 9 paths toward a soul that nothing and no one can break. What you're about to hear is not a manual of resistance, it's a map of internal construction. And if you walk it with an open heart, you'll discover that true strength never depended on what happens outside, but on what you choose to build inside. Prepare yourself, because the indestructible is not who never falls, it's who rises again. Chapter 1. Patience, the silent force. I learned the true power of patience in the most unexpected place, an almost empty train station. There was an elderly woman sitting alone on a bench with a small cloth bag in her hands. Her face was tired, but there was no defeat in her gaze, rather a strange calm, as if she knew that what she was waiting for would arrive no matter how long it took. I approached to talk with her, and she told me something I never forgot. Son, patience is not staying still. It's continuing to trust even though you see nothing moving. That phrase hit me like a forgotten secret. At that moment, I remembered what I once read in Proverbs. Better is the patient than the valiant. Better he who dominates himself than he who conquers cities. And I understood that patience is a type of silent power. It's not measured in what you achieve in an instant, but in the strength to wait without losing faith or movement. In metaphysics, it's said that patience is the sign that you already trust that the seed will grow. No one plants a tree and digs it up every day to see if it sprouted. He who knows waits because he understands that time is not the enemy, but part of the manifestation. The law of attraction teaches the same. What you ask of the universe doesn't arrive when you claim it with anxiety, but when you hold it with certainty, knowing that the perfect moment approaches. Even though you don't see it yet, patience is not passivity, it's constant action with faith. The woman at the train told me she had been visiting her sick son in another city for over a year. I never missed seeing him, she told me, and although he doesn't improve quickly, I trust that each visit is a brick in his recovery. There I understood. Patience is the art of continuing to lay bricks, even though you don't yet see the finished house. I've seen people give up at the threshold because they confuse delay with failure. But life doesn't work at the speed of anxiety, it works at the speed of the eternal. A bamboo spends years underground invisible, and suddenly in weeks grows more than 20 meters. The same happens with you. Patience is the silent force that prepares your explosion. Today I know that patience is not resignation, it's active trust. It's walking step by step without demanding that the horizon arrive immediately. It's holding faith in the midst of silence. It's believing that what was planted is already germinating, even though you don't see it sprout yet. And when you build this pillar in your soul, nothing can make you desperate because you understand that time doesn't extinguish the fire, it matures it. Today, I want to invite you to do something simple but powerful. Choose one thing you're waiting for in your life, and instead of repeating when will it come, start telling yourself, it's on its way, and every day I get one step closer. That phrase repeated with calm will be the air that keeps your flame burning. In the next chapter, we'll talk about vision, because patience without vision becomes resignation. But when you learn to see beyond the fog, your weight fills with purpose and your path with direction. Chapter 2. Vision, seeing beyond the fog. I met a man who taught me the true power of vision. He had no riches, he had no education, he didn't even know how to read. But when he spoke of what he wanted to build, it was impossible not to believe him. He worked in a small workshop in a neighborhood where everyone resigned themselves to surviving. But he spoke of raising a school, of giving a future to the children who grew up among dusty streets and broken dreams. Many looked at him with mockery. Some called him crazy. Because how could someone who barely survived day to day dream of raising a building? But I saw something different. He didn't speak from what he had in his hands. He spoke from what he saw in his interior. And I understood that this is vision, the capacity to look beyond the fog, to hold in the soul an image so clear that neither lack of resources nor criticism can erase it. The Bible tells that Abraham left his land without knowing where he was going, only guided by a promise. He walked with invisible direction, but that vision sustained him. The law of attraction explains it the same way. The mind creates images before realities, and those images, when held with faith, attract the necessary pieces. It's as if the universe said, "Where there is clarity, there will be provision." Science also confirms it. In neuroscience studies, it has been seen that the brain doesn't distinguish between what you imagine intensely and what you experience in reality. When you visualize with detail, your body begins to respond as if it were already living that experience. Thus, the visionary prepares before the opportunity arrives, and when it appears, he recognizes it because he had already seen it within himself. The man from the workshop told me a phrase I never forgot. People believe when they see, but I see to believe. And as I listened to him, I thought that maybe that school would never exist, that it was just another dream of those that get lost in routine. But I was wrong. Years passed, and one day, returning to that neighborhood, I heard children's laughter. I followed the sound and found myself with a modest but firm building. At the entrance, a simple sign said, "New Hope School." It wasn't big, it had no luxuries, but it was full of desks, blackboards, donated books, and above all, future. I asked who had raised that, and everyone pointed to the man from the workshop, the crazy one who had seen beyond the fog. In that instant, I understood that vision is not measured by what you have at the beginning, but by what you hold in your interior until the end. That man never had money to spare, but he had clarity. And that clarity attracted volunteers, resources, unexpected support. Every brick he raised was paid for by his faith in the image that had accompanied him from the first day. If you want to begin raising this pillar in your soul, plant today a clear image of what you desire. Not a lukewarm wish, but a detailed vision. Write it, imagine it, feel it on your skin as if it already existed, and then walk like one who already possesses it. Do it every day, even when the fog won't let you see the horizon. Because whoever has vision never walks blind, walks with the certainty that their steps already have a destination. And when others call him crazy, the visionary smiles because he knows that what today seems a dream, tomorrow will be reality. In the next chapter, we'll talk about discipline because vision is the flame, but without the daily constancy that gives it oxygen, any dream extinguishes before burning in greatness. Chapter 3. Discipline. The hammer that gives shape. I always thought discipline was boring, a chain that forces you to do the same thing every day, until I met a man who transformed that word into something sacred. He was a street musician. I found him in a cold plaza, in a city where everyone walked quickly. He played an old, worn violin with strings that seemed on the verge of breaking. No one listened to him. No one left coins. And still, he played with a dedication that made me stop. I asked him how long he had been practicing, and he responded calmly, every day, 30 years, even when there's no audience, even when there's no desire. I remained silent. 30 years, the same bench, the same violin, the same routine. And then I understood that discipline wasn't a chain, it was a hammer. Each repetition was a blow that gave shape to the invisible iron of his soul. In the Bible, I once read that he who is faithful in little will be faithful in much. And that man was faithful in little. 1 hour, one melody, one string tuned with patience. The law of attraction also teaches it. The universe doesn't deliver the big to you if you don't sustain the small, because the vibration of constancy prepares the ground for expansion. I also remembered what Viktor Frankl wrote in Man's Search for Meaning, that those who found a routine in the midst of the horror of the concentration camp, like praying, writing, or working on something repetitive, were the ones who managed to survive with dignity. Discipline was more than habit, it was salvation. The musician told me that with time, some students approached him. They wanted to learn to play. He didn't promise them fame or money. He only told them, sit down and play every day, even if it sounds bad, even if no one applauds you, because the music is not in the result, it's in the act of not abandoning. And there I understood something that changed my life. Discipline is the air that keeps alive the flame of vision. Vision ignites, but discipline sustains. It's like the bamboo that resists years in silence before growing, like the iron that withstands blows before becoming a sword. If you want to build this pillar in your soul, start today with something small. Get up at the same time. Write even if you have no inspiration. Exercise even if you have no desire. Pray or meditate even if the mind screams. Don't do it for the immediate result. Do it because each repetition is a blow of the hammer that gives you shape. With time, you'll discover that what seemed routine was actually an altar, and that discipline, far from being boring, is the secret language of the unstoppable. In the next chapter, we'll talk about faith. Because discipline keeps your hands firm, but it's faith that keeps your heart burning. Chapter 4. Faith, the anchor in the midst of the storm. The first time I understood the power of faith wasn't in a church or in a book. It was at a fishing port. One afternoon, I met a man who went out to sail with an old boat while the sea churned with waves I wouldn't have dared to face. I asked him if he wasn't afraid of sinking, and he responded, "The sea changes, but I trust I'll return because I know how to read the currents, and because I know I'm not alone out there." That man spoke with a security that didn't come from logic, but from faith. And I understood that faith is not denying the storm, it's having an anchor that doesn't move, even though everything around trembles. The Bible speaks of Peter walking on water and falling only when he doubted. Faith is that step that sustains you even when there's no ground under your feet. In metaphysics, it's taught that faith is vibrating in the invisible until making it visible. And in the law of attraction, faith is the ingredient that converts visualization into real attraction. It's not enough to imagine, you must believe as if it already existed. Science also has something to say. Positive psychology studies show that those who hold firm beliefs in God, in a purpose, or in a future, recover faster from crises and illnesses because faith activates internal resources that logic alone cannot. The fisherman told me that once he spent 3 nights lost at high sea, without compass, without radio, surrounded by darkness. Anyone in his place would have panicked, but he repeated to himself, "I'm going to return. This sea won't swallow me." That phrase, repeated like a mantra, was his anchor. It sustained him against fear, against fatigue, against desperation. At dawn of the 4th day, he saw the coast. He didn't return because the sea calmed. He returned because his faith kept him alive until the storm passed. That day, I understood that faith doesn't always change what happens outside, but it always changes what happens inside. If you want to raise this pillar in your soul, don't wait for immediate certainties. Look for a word, a promise, an image that is your anchor, and repeat it until it weighs more than your fear. When the waves surround you, that faith will be what keeps you standing. Faith is not waiting for there to be no storm. It's trusting that your soul has roots deeper than the highest waves. In the next chapter, we'll talk about courage, because faith sustains you in the midst of the storm, but courage is what makes you go out to face the giant in front of you. Chapter 5. Courage, the voice that faces the giant. Courage is not measured when everything is calm, but when fear tightens the chest and you still decide to advance. I learned it watching a young boxer in a neighborhood gym. He was skinny, shorter than everyone, and always seemed out of place. I saw him many times training alone, hitting an old bag that barely held up. One day I heard him talk with his trainer. He wanted to fight in the local championship. Everyone laughed. No one saw him capable. His rival was bigger, stronger, with more experience. That night I heard one of the boxers say in a low voice, They're going to kill him. The day of the fight arrived. When I saw him enter the ring, he looked like a lamb before a wolf. The audience murmured. Some mocked. I felt pity for him, but in his gaze there was no fear. There was fire. The first round was brutal. He received hard blows. He staggered more than once. Anyone would have thrown in the towel, but then something unexpected happened. In the second round, the boy raised his head, shouted forcefully, and launched a direct blow that knocked down the rival. The stadium went silent. No one believed it possible. That day I understood that courage is not absence of fear. It's the voice that speaks louder than fear. The Bible says, in the story of David and Goliath, he didn't win because he was stronger. He won because he dared to take the step that everyone feared. In metaphysics, it's taught that courage is the vibration that breaks the inertia of fear. And in the law of attraction, courage is the signal you send to the universe that you're willing to receive what you asked for, even though the scenario seems impossible. Science also speaks to us of this. Psychologist Rollo May said that courage is not the opposite of fear, but the decision to keep going forward despite it. It's a muscle of the soul that only grows when you exercise it in action. The young boxer won that night, not because of technique, not because of strength, but because he had the courage to stay standing when everyone expected him to fall. His inner voice was stronger than the crowd, and that is the true giant we face. The voice that says, "You can't. If you want to raise this pillar in your soul, don't wait to feel ready. Courage never arrives before action. Take the step even if you tremble. Speak even if your voice breaks. Face even if fear tells you to flee. You'll discover that the giant crumbles only when you dare to advance toward him." Courage doesn't guarantee you there won't be blows, but it does guarantee you that nothing and no one will be able to make you retreat from what you've already decided. In the next chapter, we'll talk about silence, because after facing the giant with courage, you'll need to learn to be quiet and discover the invisible force that only reveals itself when you choose to listen. Chapter 6. Silence, the refuge of the soul. For a long time, I thought silence was emptiness, an absence of words, an uncomfortable space that had to be filled. But everything changed when I met a painter who worked in a small studio in the mountain. She had no music. She had no distractions. She spent entire hours in complete silence in front of the canvas. One day I asked her why she didn't at least put on a radio in the background. She smiled and responded to me, "Because silence speaks, and in its words, I find the colors that people don't see." I was left with that phrase bouncing in my head, silence as a secret language. There, I understood that silence is not absence, it's presence, it's refuge of the soul. In the Bible, Elijah discovered it on Mount Horeb. There was a strong wind, an earthquake, a fire, but God wasn't in any of them. At the end came a gentle whisper, and there was the presence. That passage marked me deeply because it teaches that the greatest often reveals itself in the quietest. Metaphysics teaches the same. Silence is the space where the soul aligns with the invisible. In the law of attraction, silence is the moment to release anxiety after planting the desire. Because only when you quiet down do you let the vibration do its work. Modern science also backs it up. Studies on neuroplasticity show that the brain needs periods of silence to reorganize itself and consolidate learnings. Silence strengthens the internal connections that later translate into clarity and creativity. The painter showed me a work that had taken months to finish. Each stroke seemed to breathe calm. It wasn't just art, it was silence made color. "The world shouts," she told me, but I learned to listen to the whisper. And there I understood. Silence doesn't separate you from life. It connects you with its root. If you want to raise this pillar in your soul, don't flee from silence. Embrace it. Turn off the external noise, even if just for a few minutes a day. Sit without music, without screen, without distraction, and listen. Don't expect spectacular voices. Expect the calm that shows you what your restless mind hides. Silence is a refuge where storms don't enter, a place where the soul heals and strengthens. In the next chapter, we'll talk about the word, because after silence, each word you pronounce acquires a new weight and can become a sword that opens paths or fire that destroys. Chapter 7. The word, sword that creates or destroys. I learned to respect the force of words thanks to a teacher who never raised his voice. He was a teacher in a small school with students who came from broken families, loaded with anger and rebellion. He never punished them with shouts or blows, only with phrases. I remember one day in particular. A difficult boy, accustomed to fighting, broke a window with fury. Everyone expected him to be thrown out of the classroom. The teacher looked at him in silence, approached and said, "You are not a problem. You are an answer you haven't yet found." The classroom remained silent. That word pierced the boy stronger than any punishment, and with time that young man ended up being the first in his family to graduate. There I understood that a word can tear down or it can lift up. The Bible says it without detours. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Metaphysics teaches it the same. The verb is creative, because what you name becomes vibration, and what vibrates manifests. The law of attraction confirms it. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you declare as yours, what you repeat until converting it into your identity. Science backs this mystery. Neurologist Andrew Newberg demonstrated that positive words activate the circuits of resilience in the brain, while negative ones generate cortisol, the stress hormone. Put another way, a word can strengthen your body or sicken it. The teacher confessed something to me after class. Words are seeds. Every time I speak, I ask myself, what do I want to plant in them? Fear or hope? Since then, I could never look at my own phrases the same way. I understood that each word that leaves my mouth is a seed that germinates in someone, even if I don't see it. If you want to build this pillar in your soul, guard your tongue as you guard fire. Before speaking, ask yourself, does this that I say create or destroy? Does it open paths or raise walls? And remember, it's not just about what you say to others, but what you say to yourself. Because the indestructible soul doesn't throw words like stones at random, it releases them like swords that cut the false and open passage to the true. In the next chapter, we'll talk about action, because the word is a sword, but a sheathed sword is useless. Only when you act does the invisible become reality. Chapter 8. Action, the proof of fire. I've known many people with great dreams, with powerful words, with ignited faith, but who never took a step. And those dreams remained floating in the air, waiting for an action that never came. I understood the importance of action when I met a young woman who wanted to be a writer. She spoke with passion about her ideas, about the book she would someday publish, about how her words would touch lives. But every time someone asked her how much she had written, she responded, "I'm still waiting for inspiration." Months passed, years passed, and her books continued living only in her mind. One day in a workshop, she met another writer. He didn't have as much talent or ideas as profound, but he had a habit. He wrote every day, even if it was 2 pages, even if they were bad. After a year, he had a complete manuscript. She was still waiting. There I understood that action is the proof of fire. You can have vision, faith, and word, but if you don't act, the fire extinguishes in smoke. The Bible says, "Show me your faith without works, and I will show you my faith by my works." Metaphysics teaches the same. Vibration attracts, but action opens the door through which what you've attracted enters. And the law of attraction insists. If you don't align your steps with your desire, the universe has no way to deliver it to you. Science also confirms it. Motivation studies show that action precedes inspiration. It's not that you act when you're inspired, it's that action generates the chemistry that ignites inspiration. Movement is what awakens the dormant energy. The young writer finally understood the lesson. She decided to sit down every morning regardless of whether she felt the words flowing or not. At first it was painful, but day after day, page after page, she was discovering that action was more powerful than waiting. And after a time, she had a book in her hands, not the perfect book, but the real book. That day she understood, and I with her, that action converts fire into reality. If you want to raise this pillar in your soul, stop waiting for the perfect moment. It will never arrive. Start with what you have, from where you are, with what you know now. Take a step. Even if you tremble, write a page. Even if it's bad, make a call. Even if it scares you, take the first step and the path will open under your feet. Because true fire doesn't live in what you think or in what you say. It lives in what you do. In the next chapter, we'll talk about legacy, because action builds your life, but your legacy is what remains lit when you're no longer here. Chapter 9. Legacy, the echo that doesn't die. Legacy is not what you accumulate, nor what you keep in boxes, nor what you leave written in a document. Legacy is the fire that keeps burning when you're no longer here. I discovered it in a school teacher who worked in a forgotten town. His salary barely reached. His shoes were always worn, but every morning he arrived with a smile and repeated the same phrase to his students. You are not what the world says. You are greater than you imagine. Years passed. The teacher grew old, and one day his chair remained empty. But something extraordinary happened. Those children grew up, and each one carried in their memory that phrase. Some became doctors, others engineers, others teachers, and all repeated with pride that they once heard in a humble classroom. We are greater than we imagine. That day I understood that a legacy doesn't die with the person, it lives in the seeds he left in others. The Bible expresses it with force. Though he dies, he still speaks through faith, because the faith of those who burn doesn't end in their body, it continues ignited in those who come after. Metaphysics says it another way. Energy is not destroyed, it only transforms. And what you planted in life continues vibrating, even when you no longer breathe. Science also confirms it. Epigenetics shows that the habits, emotions, and decisions of one generation can modify the life of the next. Literally, your fire can be written in the memory of your children and grandchildren. The teacher was never famous, never appeared in a newspaper, but he left a legacy that transformed the destiny of hundreds, and that is the true echo of an indestructible soul, to live in such a way that your voice continues to be heard even though your throat keeps silence. If you want to raise this pillar in your soul, ask yourself every day, what am I leaving in others? Fear or hope? Doubt or bravery? An example of surrender or an example of struggle? Your legacy doesn't begin the day you die. It begins today in every word, in every act, in every spark you ignite in those around you. Because in the end, the body extinguishes, but the fire you planted in others never dies. In the next chapter, you're going to discover it. It won't be theory. It will be a living portrait, a journey from sun to sun in the skin of someone who walks with the 9 pillars ignited. Chapter 10. A day in the life of an indestructible soul. Imagine waking up one morning being someone who has built the 9 pillars. The alarm sounds and you don't postpone it with laziness because your discipline has already molded the habit of getting up with purpose. You sit in silence for a few minutes. You breathe. You listen to the invisible, and you feel your soul aligning before speaking with the world. Your vision, the clear image of what you desire to build. It doesn't matter that it's not yet in your hands. You see it so real that you already walk with the certainty that it's inevitable. That vision mixes with faith, a faith that doesn't depend on the news or on circumstances, because you know your anchor is beyond what moves. You go out to the street and the first test arrives. Someone offends you, someone challenges you, but your patience is stronger than your impulse. You don't react from anger, you react from the calm that sustains. And when you speak, your words are not knives in the air, they are well-directed swords that build and don't destroy. Fear appears because it always appears, but your courage speaks louder and you advance even though your voice trembles. Each step you take is concrete action, not just promises. You move in coherence with what you say and what you believe. Throughout the day, your life becomes a seed for others. Your legacy begins in the small gestures, in the way you listen, in how you inspire, in how you leave each person a little more lit than before finding you. And when night falls, you can rest in peace because you know you didn't live a borrowed day, you lived a day rooted in pillars that not even the strongest wind can tear down. This is how an indestructible soul looks in practice. It's not perfect, it's not free from struggles, but it always rises, it always remains, it always leaves a mark. And now I ask you, do you want your life to look like this? Do you want to build a fire that no one can extinguish? If your answer is yes, begin today, one pillar at a time. Thank you for making it this far. If this journey ignited something within you, let it burn stronger. Share in the comments which pillar resonated with you and how you're going to apply it. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next audiobooks, because what we've shared here is only the beginning. There are more maps, more secrets, more flames waiting to be ignited in your life.